Okay. Welcome to the July 19th, 2021 Board of Directors meeting for MSAD 51. Thank you everybody for being here on a July evening in the summertime. Tonight we don't have any recognition. We do have some new board members. I'm going to go a little out of order here just because it seems weird not to welcome them right in the beginning. So I don't know, Tom McGinnis from North Yarmouth, Vanessa Bryant from North Yarmouth, and Jason Record from Cumberland. If you all want to just say hello or say anything, you're more than welcome to.
I'll start. I'm Tom McGinnis from North Yarmouth. I'm excited to be here, a little nervous. And thank you to all the board members who have been so welcoming. I'm really excited to work with you over the next 3 years.
That's right. Thank you.
Vanessa Bryant from North Yarmouth. I am as well excited, and I thank you community members again for voting for me, and I welcome the board and all their opinions, and it's been a learning experience thus far.
Jason Record from Cumberland, glad to be here. I'll do my best and take all the guidance I can get along the way. Thank you.
Welcome. Excited to have you guys here, and thanks for your commitment to the district. So next we have approval of minutes for June 21st, 2021. Do I have a motion?
So moved.
And a second?
I'll second.
Any discussion? Okay, and for those of you that are new, obviously you don't need to vote. So all in favor? Thank you. So next we have public comment. Public comment is reserved for anybody in the public. I will keep track of 3 minutes for each person. I will awkwardly interrupt you if you go over. Thank you for your patience in that in advance. So you are welcome to approach the podium, just state town and your name, and we will listen.
Thanks. Jason Curry. I'm a high school teacher here at Greeley High School. I've been employed here since August of 1998. And I'd like to say, as the new president of the MSAD 51 Education Association, that I very much look forward to working with all of you, to developing a working relationship with each of you individually. And I'm really looking forward to solving the issues and problems that will come out of the next school year. The term of the president of the Education Association is 1 year, and I plan to be a lame duck already. So I will do what is right to work with you and for you to solve all of the problems that your staff can help you with. So just wanted to introduce myself. Thank you very much for the hard work you've already been doing, and welcome you who are new to the board to the hard work you're about to endure. Thanks.
Thank you.
Hi, I'm Olive. I am from North Yarmouth. I go to Greeley Middle School, and I'm going into 7th grade. My parents told me at the last board meeting there was a comment made about the stickers being handed out in front of GMS. Since I was one of those people who made and handed out the pride stickers, I thought it was important for the board to hear my voice. I go by they, them pronouns, and I have always wanted people to know where I stand and who I am. Part of who I am is I identify with the LGBTQIA+ community. I like to tell my teachers because it makes me feel more comfortable, and when I see a rainbow flag in a classroom, it makes me feel more accepted, and it is easier to tell the teacher who I am and how I identify. I am proud of who I am, but it can also sometimes feel alone. Seeing the pride flags makes me feel welcome. I am here in support of the equity statement. Thank you for your time.
Hello, my name is Jeff Candora, and I'm a resident of North Yarmouth and the father of 2 MSAD 51 students, a rising 5th grader and a 7th grader who should be very proud of themselves. I'm here tonight on behalf of my family in support of the district's work surrounding DEI. We are also slightly disappointed that we even need to be here to advocate for this work. That's so necessary and important. My wife and I are glad that we live in a district and our children are being taught in schools and by teachers that are willing to take a hard look at how to create the best educational environment possible and continually improve upon its practices. We read and hear quite a bit about cancel culture in the news and in social media. We've heard those opposing the DEI work claim that they simply want both sides to be presented. But Black, brown, and Indigenous voices and stories have been canceled for hundreds of years. The stories and voices of women have been canceled for hundreds of years. Queer voices and stories have been canceled for hundreds of years. When we refuse to look at the hard truths in our history and the context in which they took place, we aren't looking at both sides. We're continuing to cancel the voices who have been kept silent. Adding books to our curriculum that include diverse characters or accurately teach the history of our country and the varied people in it is not some nefarious plot to indoctrinate our children. They are sincere attempts to educate and prepare our kids for the world in which they collectively live and do it better than we have in the past. We must strive to do better. I learned about the Tulsa Race Massacre by watching an HBO series about fictional superheroes. The extent of my education about the indigenous people in New England in the 1600s was that they helped to teach pilgrims how to fertilize their corn using fish. That's embarrassing. This is the type of incomplete and inadequate education that leads adults to cherry-pick Martin Luther King Jr. quotes that they think support their position because all they know of the man is the "I have a dream" speech. And it's gratifying to know that MSAD 51 is doing better than my own public education 30 years ago. Learning about the Tulsa Race Massacre does not saddle my children with racial guilt, but it does teach them the consequences of hate and the need to inoculate ourselves against it. Learning about the Stonewall riots does not threaten straight cisgender students, but it does allow my 7th grader to see themselves and their story in the story of our nation. Accurately examining the role of slavery in the founding and development of our country does not make students hate America. It teaches them that patriotism is not blind devotion, but rather an expression of hope. Hope that we have the capacity to improve, even when that improvement is challenging or uncomfortable. Thank you for doing this work. We support the draft statement of the Equity Committee and am heartened by the work that has been done. We urge the district to continue its commitment to diversity, equity, and inclusion. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you.
Hi, I don't public speak, so bear with me. My name is Wendy Simmons, and I'm from North Yarmouth. I'm here tonight to express my support for the Equity Committee and their work. I have 2 children. One graduated with the class of 2021 from Greeley High School, and the other is in 8th grade at GMS. Equity and inclusion is personal to me. I have 7 nieces and nephews from 3 siblings who are biracial. My sister is here with me tonight, also in support. My children have friends from different ethnic backgrounds and from the LGBTQ+ community. Regardless of my personal experience, equity and inclusion is important for the health and well-being of our community, society, and humanity. We did not create the situations we are in today, but inherited it from our ancestors. These difficult conversations must start somewhere, and it should be with our generation in the 21st century. I'm not willing to kick this can further down the road for our children to deal with. Thank you for your time and everything that you do.
Thank you.
Hi, my name is Zach Bouchard. I live in Cumberland, Maine. I have 2 kids in the school. I just want to thank the school board for their commitment on equity, and I think the updated equity policy is quite thoughtful and well written. While I find it shocking that there are people who are against this equity policy, it is unfortunately a sign of our politically divisive times. I think it's important to note that in the most recent school board election, there was only one candidate who was outspoken and actively against the work of the Equity Committee. That person received a total of 822 votes. The number of votes that were split among the remaining 4 other candidates was 2,974. Specifically, only 21% of the votes went for the one candidate outspoken and actively against the Equity Committee. It's also worth noting that the one candidate who was the most vocal and active supporter of the equity policy and work received the most votes with 915. The overwhelming majority of our community members support the equity policy and the work of the Equity Committee. While we should certainly listen to the views and opinions of everyone in the community, even to those that the community at large disagrees with, we simply cannot let the vocal minority derail the process of educating and promoting equity, inclusion, and diversity. I urge you not to be intimidated by the aggressive and embarrassing tactics that a few have taken. As a community, we need to focus on healing and unity and shake hands with our neighbors whom we disagree with and not shame either side. In the meantime, in this democratic process, let's implement the goals and wishes of the vast majority of our community. Thank you so much for all of your hard work on this difficult issue.
Thank you.
Good evening. My name is Jennifer Mancini, and I live in North Yarmouth, and I have 2 children in the school district. And I've come here tonight to wholeheartedly express my support for the equity work done by MSAD 51 on behalf of my husband, Peter, and myself. We actually read the leaked draft policy and are very curious what part of its content were deemed objectionable to those who spoke in opposition to it. We didn't hear any specific detail objections to the draft, but we can cite a few specific things that we welcome in the draft. For example, we like that it addresses confronting harmful stereotypes. We appreciate that it recognizes richness and valuing diverse heritages, including one's own. And we definitely agree with recognizing the need to close the existing opportunity gaps. My family enjoys learning from unique expressions of the human experience. It is not a threat to our values or our lifestyle or our heritage. We embrace the richness that diversity brings to our lives, and as the world becomes increasingly globalized, we believe it would be a disservice to our children to neglect to teach them about these issues. Thank you.
Thank you.
Hi, Kate Perrin, North Yarmouth. I have 3 children that span across 3 different schools. It's really weird to be over here. Hi, everyone. I just wanted to very specifically put in my support for the board in when you're reviewing your goals in August at your board retreat. I would just really like equity to be continued, specifically on the goal of passing a comprehensive equity policy. I think that's really important, and it's a continuation of work that got put on hold because of COVID and other unfortunate situations in our community. So I'm here to support the board, keeping the goal of equity for the next school year. Thank you.
Thank you.
Hi, everyone. My name is Katie Simpson. I live in Cumberland. That's my lovely family over there. And I'm here because I fully support the Equity Committee and all of its work. And I came here without writing a speech because I wasn't sure exactly what issues might come up. But after hearing Olive's amazing testimony, I wanted to share my story about growing up in rural Maine many years ago, but in a time when it was not safe to be an out bisexual person. And so I was not an out bisexual person. I was a closeted bisexual person throughout my school career. And it definitely impacted me. And the fact that MSAD 51 is a place that is striving to be a safe place for folks to be their full selves and supporting students no matter who they are and how they identify is very important to me. And I will keep showing up while you all keep doing this work. And I really appreciate the work that you're doing.
Thank you.
Hello, Sherry Boothby from Cumberland. I have 1 daughter in GMS going into 5th grade. I didn't prepare anything. I just have 3 brief things I want to say. I really want to just say ditto to what Jeff said, but I'll go with what else I wanted to get off my mind, get out to you. First of all, I want to thank you for last year for keeping our kids safe. I know it was a challenging year. It was very challenging for me personally, but you know, we've come out on the other side for the most part, and I just want to thank the board and the administration for keeping our kids safe. Second, I want to also say that I support the equity and inclusion work that's being done, and I hope that will continue. As other people have said, it's very important. And then third, something that Jeff said that I agree with is that I don't want our history education for our children to be whitewashed and dumbed down so that it's not accurate anymore. I was taught pretty much the way he mentioned he was about, you know, nothing being accurately portrayed. So that also I am in support of. Thank you.
Thank you.
Hi there. My name is Jennifer Benham. I'm a Cumberland resident with 2 daughters at GMS. I'm here in response to the public comments of the school board meeting on June 14th, in which community members, including newly elected school board member Jason Record, opposed the district's working draft of the equity policy in its very earliest stages. I'm extremely disappointed that an elected school board member, whose task it is to represent the best interests of all students, would stand up in front of our entire community and declare that a portion of our students are not deserving of protections that ensure physical and emotional safety, equitable opportunities, and representation within classroom curriculum. I'd briefly like to acknowledge the opposition to the policy that was voiced based upon a person's religious beliefs. What was heard was a narrow representation of the wide range of religions and belief systems in our community, many of which support the advancement of equity work. More importantly, I would like the board to recognize separation of church and state with all matters regarding district operations and policies. Concerns founded on the basis of personal religious beliefs have absolutely no place for debate within a publicly funded school district. The work of the Equity Leadership Steering Committee is the most important work we are doing in this district. We can only expect students to thrive emotionally, socially, and academically when we are ensuring their safety and equality. I cannot fathom finding controversy and voicing opposition about leadership at MSAD 51, working toward ensuring that students are protected from discrimination and inequalities. The argument that we should all be colorblind or culture blind and live in a culturally ignorant bliss in which kindness saves the day is at best a misguided assertion. It's a fallacy, and the only purpose it serves is to perpetuate the invisibility of marginalized groups of people. We all need to see and hear the historical and present-day voices of people of color, of those living with disabilities, and of those who identify within the LGBTQIA+ community. Without a clear-eyed look at our past and present-day differences, strengths, struggles, and injustices, there is no hope for understanding or meaningful progress toward equity. I am here to emphatically state that I strongly support the continued development and eventual passing of the equity policy. It is essential and it is overdue. Most importantly, I want to publicly say to all the students of color in our district, to all the students living with disabilities in our district, and to all the lesbian, gay, bisexual, transgender, queer, intersex, non-binary, asexual, and pan students in our district, I see and respect you. You make our district stronger. I will continue to raise my voice to ensure you have equal rights, protections, opportunities, and representation in our schools. Thank you.
Thank you.
Hi, my name is Stacey Caulk. I'm a resident of North Yarmouth. I have two children, a incoming 5th grader and an incoming pre-Ker. I would like to say ditto to everything that she just said, which she said much better than I will. But I'm here today, first of all, to just say thank you to all of you for all of the efforts you've put in over the last year and a half. It's been incredibly difficult, and I cannot imagine what you've all been doing, but so many of us are so thankful for all of the hard work that you have been putting in. I also wanted to speak on the equity policy. I read that draft when it came out before the last meeting. Like some others, I tried to get into the equity team meeting and had a hard time, no big deal. But when I read the policy, I had a really hard time. I was trying to read it through the lens of what could be problematic, and I had a really hard time sort of envisioning for myself what would be problematic about that statement. I thought it was excellent, and I wanted to say thank you to everyone who worked on it. But then I watched the meeting and I recognized that, in fact, not everybody agreed with the policy, which is why I'm here today to say that my family and I, we support this policy, but not only do we support the policy, we also support the need for the policy. It sounded like perhaps some people might be questioning whether this policy is really necessary. I would say that this policy is probably necessary in every district across our country, and perhaps in the few districts that it's not necessary, there would be no argument or debate because it would exist and would have existed for a long time. I also wanted to follow up very specifically on a few comments that were made last month to some applause, more applause than I would have expected about our LGBTQ students and community members. Our trans students are students, and they deserve all of the same access to opportunities as all of our students. And they deserve to know that they have access to all of those. Obviously, the equity policy goes beyond that, but that is a specific comment that I think came up that needs to be said so that students who are watching this and family members who are watching this recognize that there are members of the community who support them and that their identity is not up for argument and is not up for debate. On that same point, I also just wanted to say thank you for the seemingly simple action that was taken at the middle school during Pride that came up during public comment last time. It brought tears to my eyes. That is the kind of thing that is seemingly small but has a large impact. And I thought to myself, had something like that happened in schools across this country 20, 30, 40 years ago, there would be students or there would be adults walking around who would be just in a different place in their life had they had that support, but also that there would also just be more people amongst us. This is, there is a real mental health crisis that has been affecting trans students in particular, but the LGBTQ community as a whole. And so I just think, again, this is why an equity policy like this is so vitally important. I support this, and I want to thank you, and I look forward to being engaged in the process as it continues.
Thank you.
Hi, I'm Jill Oconnor. I'm a Cumberland resident and parent of 2 middle school students. In my professional life, I am a youth services librarian, so I work with kids and deal in books. Books showing youth of color, showing LGBTQIA plus youth, showing differently abled youth, showing American Indian, First Nation youth who live, who play, and who learn like everyone else, help Black, Brown, Asian Pacific, LGBTQIA plus First Nation children see themselves, and that is empowering. And white children can actually grow accustomed to seeing people of other races, ethnicities, abilities, and sexual identities, and stop having to view them as the other. Nina Cruz, who's an illustrator of a book called A Girl Like Me, says, when you see yourself reflected in the pages of a book, you're part of the conversation. You're part of the story. You're not ignored. It gives you a sense of ownership to the world that you're in. She says every child deserves that, and the consequences of children not seeing themselves in the characters that they read about can be profound. I think she said it well. I really agree with that, and think that we need to continue to look at that as we look at our curriculum and the way we're supporting students in the district. Representation matters. This has been a tough year filled with a lot of hate and racism in our country, and the idea of othering children and teens takes place in a lot of contexts, and these kids feel that and live that, and we don't need to have that in our schools and with our teachers and in our curriculum. So I think that this past year and some of the work that's been going, some of the stuff that's been going on in our country, that we absolutely do the equity work, and I wholeheartedly support the equity statement, and I think I'm also speaking for my husband, Brian, and also agrees to this because I have a little league game. So thank you.
Thank you. Is there anyone else in the public that would like to speak? Okay. Thank you to everyone that spoke. Next on the agenda, we have communications. We have already welcomed our new board members. Thank you guys for being here. I didn't know if any other board members had anything they would like to share. I will say that Mike Williams and I attended the farmers market on Saturday. This is something that Mike brought up as a way to connect with people outside of this meeting in the public. And so it is now being held on the, I'm sorry, is it the third or first? Third Saturday. Thank you. Maybe you should do this. Third Saturday of every month, which kind of lines up to meetings soon thereafter. So Mike and I sat there for an hour on Saturday, got to see a few people. We also were joined by town councilor Tom Gruber. It was great. We didn't get a lot of traffic, but hopefully maybe if we move our table a little bit more in a different spot, people will come say hi. So
better signage.
Signage, yes. More. Cumberland needs more signs. So yes. Sorry. So anyway, that's one thing we are going to be doing, and I've reached out to the Cumberland residents if they are interested in joining, and I would assume there's probably an opportunity in North Yarmouth as well, so maybe we could set that up for North Yarmouth residents. Is there anything else that anybody would like to bring up for communications? Okay. So then we will move on to our presentation for this evening, which is being presented by Oak Point.
Yes, Oak Point Associates, as you know, is the architectural firm that has been working with the district on creating a concept design for a new primary school. The district and the facilities committee and the board have also asked them to take a look at Mabel I. Wilson School in terms of any renovations that need to be done. So tonight, after a fairly long process of getting to this point, Oak Point is here to present a final concept design for the board, talk about the final price tag that is being shared with the board this evening for consideration. I think Peter will probably, after the presentation, talk about potential next steps going from here. So I just want to welcome Oak Point back to give us this final concept design at this point.
Thank you, Jeff. It should be coming up on the screen for board members to be able to see as well.
Okay. Is technology agreeing?
I'm not seeing anything down here, just a black screen.
That's kind of low. That would be great. Yeah.
Come on, you don't like the theater?
You stare at my head. We do a Phil Donahue thing coming down, Dirk.
Thank you. Dirk, is there any way to raise the projection so it's up above our heads? Okay, awesome.
I'm worried about Jason.
We're having a Zoom meeting now.
Oh, it's on. How's that?
Oh, that's so much better.
That's great, Dirk, thank you.
Good out there?
All right, Tyler, we're ready.
Excellent. Well, thank you all for having us here. We've been hard at work over the past, I guess, year and a half now on this project, starting out with a number of different things. So to start, some quick introductions. My name is Tyler Barter. I'm an architect and project manager with Oak Point. I'm joined tonight with Sarah Smith. She's an interior designer and educational planner. Allison DiMatteo, who's one of our landscape architects and also a site planner. Jack Gagnon, our civil engineer, and Rob Tillotson, he's the principal in charge and president of the firm. Quickly on the agenda, we wanted to take you through a little bit of the the high-level look at how this project came about, what the overall need was, some of the things that started these discussions even before we became involved in the process. Through that, we'll take a look at how we can expand an additional building on this campus and why that makes sense for the long-term viability for the district and the capacity. We'll take a look at the the new primary school plan, the enhancements at Maple Eye and the addition there, the impacts on MSAD's central office and how we're gonna relocate that facility. We'll take a look at the budget and then quickly go through the schedule and milestones leading up the next steps and up to a potential referendum in November. So starting on what the need was, back in 2009, there were 2 enrollment projections done that indicated a long-term decline in the overall enrollment of the district. We've graphed out those 2 districts, 2 sets of projections. That's the orange and the blue line. And then what you'll see in that gray line, those are the actual enrollments starting from 2009 and then going through the 2019-20 year. In 2016, another set of enrollment projections was done in response to kind of that flatlining that you see of those projections. It really became evident that the decline was not going to proceed as originally projected. And it really gave a different picture of the district overall. This next graph shows those projections in actual student enrollment. The blue ones are through 2020-21, and then the yellow ones are the next set of projections going out to through 2028 and 9. With that, you're looking at an additional, just over 600 additional students enrolling into your district and needing some management on the population side and the capacity within your buildings in order to make this work. So what we found out based on the analysis of these projections that were done in 2016 is that you need an additional school somewhere within the district. We did some site looks, we looked at some other options in North Yarmouth, and then eventually ended up back at the campus, and we'll talk a little bit more as we go forward. So that led to the idea of a pre-K to 1 facility that would house the entirety of those grades, provide some relief for Maple Eye. The next thing we took a look at was how is the Maple Eye facility gonna respond to this enrollment increase over the next few years. So taking a look at the capacity and the long-term flexibility. With an on-campus solution, we knew that we had to take a really hard look at how the vehicular and pedestrian traffic was gonna be managed within this campus. We know that there's a lot of traffic on both Tuttle and Main Street, so making sure that all of the improvements and the additional capacity here at the campus was gonna be able to be managed. We wanted to make sure that both of the schools that we're touching really get some long-term flexibility. So giving you the ability to adapt and change with ever-changing educational programs. So making sure that those facilities are as long-term flexible as we can. We heard a lot, both when we talked to the community, educators, and then administrative leaders, that outdoor learning and play spaces was really a critical thing on this campus, especially since a number of the play areas around the Maple Eye facility have been kind of displaced by the ever-growing portable farm that you're seeing. And then we wanted to make sure that if we were going to impact the Sweetser School, that we could maintain that somewhere on the campus. So these are kind of the overarching guidelines that we were utilizing as we went through this process. So what is the plan? So what we're going to talk about tonight is the new pre-K to 1 facility, and then Mabel I and how that impacts the other. The diagram on the left is how your schools are currently set up with the 3 on-campus facilities. On the right, you'll see how we're going to start to kind of reduce the percentages of the pie that each one of these facilities is going to handle. So you'll see that the new pre-K allows us to move some grades out of Mabel I. We are also able to absorb one grade level from the middle school into Mabel I. Wilson with a strategic addition, allowing these 3 facilities to have really good long-term flexibility going forward. I wanted to talk a little bit about the process as well. So when we were hired back in October of 2019, pre-pandemic, we really were able to do a lot of really good work with the district. So we had a couple community forums. We've met with all of your educators, administrative leaders. We've met with you a few times. We met with an advisory committee that was helping us guide that process at the early on. Through that, we were able to evaluate the sites, which included a site in North Yarmouth. We put out an advertisement for the district to purchase land. We had a few offers that we were able to evaluate during that time that didn't pan out. We continued to meet with the community throughout this, and then we worked with the administrative staff to develop the program. So what needed to be in these buildings to make them long-term and viable? In January of this year is when we really, I think, finalized that this was going to be on this campus, and a number of things that we'll talk about in a little bit really made that an advantageous decision for the district. Some things that weren't available when previous looks at the district's campus were had. From January through May, we took a hard look at our building concepts, so taking a look at how these facilities were going to take shape, how they would fit on the site, how we could manage both parking, parent drop-off, creating that safe environment, creating those natural outdoor play spaces, and then tying that all into the campus architecture. So what are these buildings going to look like, and how can we best create a full campus feel with some new additions? We started with some draft budgets at that time as well, and that's kind of led us up to that next piece as we've worked through some of the facilities and finance committees, adjusting the concepts, really trying to refine these, and then move on to this last step, which is tonight. So presenting this full plan to you. I wanted to talk briefly about the existing campus before we get into the technical piece. So when this was looked at previously, there were a number of, I think, concerns about the ability to put another facility on the campus. And one of the things that changed that I think many of you know about is that additional 2.5 acres that has been put under contract in directly adjacent to the superintendent's office currently. I think this really opened up a lot of opportunities for us to take a hard look at how to fit a new facility in and then make some adjustments to the traffic patterns that will help, hopefully in the long term, give you some really good queuing spaces, places on campus for buses to safely pick up and drop off for these 2 facilities. And Jack and Allison will discuss that in more detail as we go forward. From there, this is really a story of 3 different projects. So the first one is that blue area that takes over the superintendent's office and the adjacent parking lot, a little bit of the access road there. That's the primary location for the new school. This purple area is where we're looking at for improvements at Mabel I, including the addition and additional parking, which the campus desperately needs. And then finding a home for the Sweetser School in the central office, relocating that up onto Main Street, giving it the same level of visibility while respecting the historic nature of both the structure and the area that we're looking at. So moving on to the new primary school. The first thing that we did was we took a look at the enrollment projections that had been provided, and we identified the largest number of students for any of the given years. And that really served as our baseline as we started to take a look at the size of this building. In kindergarten, the largest year was actually this upcoming year, so it'll be kind of interesting to see how enrollments coming out of a pandemic impact this overall projection. So that's just about 202 students. We're looking at a class size of 18, which led to a total number of classrooms of 12. So that gives us an extra capacity within that building of 216 students. So you still have 14 extra spaces before we start needing to talk about flex. First grade is 207 students in that 2022 to 23. We've used a maximum class size of 20. We know the district really has an emphasis on keeping those class sizes small. That provides 11 classrooms for 220 student capacity. Again, making sure that this building isn't full on the first day, giving you that extra buffer of another 13 in that grade level. The other thing that we've also included in the plan, because we really understand that these projections are still a moving thing. It's an evolving piece of data that updates. Is some flex classrooms that gives you some long-term flexibility. We've included 2 in this overall plan, which gives you the ability to use those for either kindergarten or first grade for an additional 40 student capacity. So if a bubble does happen to come through the district, that you're in a good position to manage it without additional construction. This program also includes 2 pre-K classrooms, and that was something I think the district decided seemed to be a good fit while still working with your outside partners to manage those programs. And I'll turn this over to Sarah to discuss the educational model.
Thanks, Tyler. I'm just going to review the plan for those who are not familiar with the layout. This right here is the lower level of the new building, and as you can see here is the main entrance that brings you into a secure entry, and a stair that brings you up into the upper floors. So we have a secure administrative area in the brown. Up in the red areas, those are more of the allied art spaces. So we have the gymnasium and cafeteria on this space. Here's the cafeteria here. We have the gymnasium space. We have art and music on this floor. We also have what we're calling an amphitheater space, but we're doing it in a flat layout, so that it offers a lot more flexibility within that space for indoor play and indoor recess and things like that. That creates a spline between the cafeteria and this open space and the gymnasium. So there's a lot of open play space in here for indoor recess, which we have in this climate quite a bit. In the lower area, down here, we have the pre-K that leads out to an outdoor play and learning space that's designated just for that grade level. It's not forwarding. Oh, sorry. Gotcha. Sorry about the technical thing here. We had a lot of things on here. There we go. So this is the upper level. This is going to house both the kindergarten and the first grade, along with the flexible spaces. So what you see here is the 12 kindergarten classrooms in the back here in green. And then in the blue, we have the first grade. And one thing I want you to notice in between, you'll see a lot of gray spaces. And what these allow for interactive learning environments. So there's spaces that are impromptu for large groups to get together, but there are also spaces that are really flexible if you have to have focused learning for a child that maybe needs to test outside of a class or needs to have a specialist come in and work with them within their learning environment. That's the one thing when Tyler was mentioning the whole flexibility of spaces. That's one thing that we've really tried to hit in all of the areas throughout this building so that there's a lot of impromptu learning that can happen. The purple is the flex spaces that we spoke about, centralizing those within the classroom wings so that it really doesn't matter which one is the one that's the growth area. It's centralized so that they can stay within their pods. This next box that you see in the reddish color, that's the library area. And again, we have access to the outside play space, so we'll be able to have outdoor gardens for the library space that would enter right into that same level. In the yellow, again, centralized so that all students have equal walking distance, shortening the period time of any student having to go into special services so that they don't have to walk a far distance from their classroom. And that concludes the walkthrough. Thank you.
So just briefly, to talk about some of the site features that are associated with the new primary school. Let's see if I can get this. Okay, thank you. So just to orient you, the lower level that Sarah was going through is really this band of space that runs from top to bottom on the building, and then the wing that goes from left to right, as well as the space here that is sort of the upper level. One of the challenges that we have on this site, which we're trying to turn into an advantage, and I think it's a great marriage that we've been able to make with the building and the site, is that there's a pretty significant grade change from where the parking and drop-off area is on the site to the natural grade at the highest point of the site, up on the sort of northwest edge. And what that results in is that we have to have some place on the site where we do a grade break. So that's what Sarah was talking about. We've sort of divided the outdoor play and learning spaces on the site into two zones, one that's associated with the lower level and is adjacent to the pre-K area, and one that's more associated with the upper level where the library is and some of the older grade classroom spaces. So we'll talk about that. We're going to zoom out into the campus to talk about the overall pedestrian vehicular circulation in a minute. But the point of this slide is to really orient you closer in to the school. So the main entrance that Sarah talked about is secure entrance is right here on the plan. And what we've done, one of the things we did was to be able to economize on space, we've actually combined the bus loop for both the Mabel I. Wilson and the new primary school into a single bus loop that takes place on the connecting central drive that runs between the high school and the middle school. So we've effectively kind of carved away a little bit of the outdoor track area. The straight run out for the track is being relocated and proposed to be relocated, and you'll see that in the overall campus slide. And we're shifting that connector drive between the high school and the middle school up toward the track a little bit to be able to make room for that shared bus loop, which is going to be able to allow some flexibility in terms of busing and safe pedestrian circulation between the two schools. We have a new drive here, which is actually predominantly during the drop-off hours and exit, although it's a two-way. It's wide enough to be a two-way drive, and that is aligned with Public Street across the way. But essentially, the drop-off is coming in by Mabel I, swings up around the new school and drops off, and then there's a visitor and parent parking lot as well as some staff spaces directly adjacent to that drop-off area. We're proposing a terrace and outdoor seating area off of the cafeteria, which would be great to be able to provide some outdoor dining and seating opportunities that are directly adjacent to that space, as well as a generous outdoor plaza area. And then the pre-K playground is in this area. It's actually a pretty large space for the number of pre-K classrooms that you have, but that space is sort of doing double duty because it's along Tuttle Road, and it's sort of acting as both a buffer space as well as that pre-K playground. So we wanted to make that place generous so that you could have a variety of outdoor play and learning opportunities, be able to do have a lot of different experiences for the pre-K level, whether it's a loose parts playground, whether it's sort of a imagination stage type of playground, whether you wanted to do like sand and water play, if you want to do an area for gross motor, if you want to do. So we've got places for gardens. We've got a lot of different areas to be able to give you that flexibility, but also to be able to kind of create a little bit of a buffer between Tuttle Road and that pre-K outdoor area. And then this upper area, really the play and learning area kind of encompasses this entire kind of back area of the school. We originally, when we were putting the school together, we kind of had everything flipped, and we kind of had some circulation up there in terms of some of the drop-off, and what we heard back from feedback was that's really the kind of the attractiveness of that site is really that you can have your outdoor play and learning areas kind of backed onto a quieter, more residential zone. So we really, in the plan that we ended up with, are taking advantage of that, the fact that that's really a very residential, very quiet feel back there, and really putting more of our kind of busier spaces away from that outdoor play and learning. Finally, we do have, every school has to have some area for service, and so the service area for the site is really kind of off of the edge of this bus loop, which would allow us both easy access to the kitchen spaces and the mechanical spaces that really do need that kind of close access for service, as well as be able to have direct access off of that sort of central spine in terms of not having to kind of go around the building to get into a service area. We're using the grade change on the site to be able to kind of tuck that in as well. And then this is a little bit hard to see, but we wanted to sort of show an overall campus map. So that sort of end on the new runoff on the track is shown in this location. We've also are relocating the shot put, I think, back up into this area because that is affected where this new drive is relocated. But that's how that sort of fits on the site. You can see the bus loop between the primary and the Mableye School, and then the red stars are really the main entrances into the school as they're envisioned with some of the proposed changes. So the primary school we've already talked about. We will talk a little bit more about Mableye. And then those two areas that are shown are sort of the parent drop-off areas. So the thought with the new primary school is that primarily circulation would come in off Tuttle Road and go through the existing Mableye Wilson front parking and be able to queue through there, through the parent drop-off, and then exit back onto Tuttle a little bit further west. The Mableye Wilson School basically would come in from either direction, either from up by the middle and high school along Central Drive or from Tuttle Road, and have a drop-off at that near the main entrance at Mableye Wilson. And then we're also creating a little bit of a connector between those two drop-offs for parents who need to do two. You know, we're dropping off one student at one school and then moving on to another school. And Jack can talk a little bit more about that. There's also, the Yellow Star is really a secondary entrance at the Mableye Wilson School, which is proposed to be able to be more convenient for children being dropped off by the bus, so they're not walking around the school to get to that front entrance, but they're really using a convenient entrance that you'll see when you see the floor plan is really kind of a straight shot through the school to the main entrance. There's a spine there. I'll turn it over to Jack to talk a little bit more about parking, circulation, and some other civil type things.
Thank you, Allison. As Allison mentioned, one of the items that we've incorporated is utilizing some increased queuing for the parent drop-off, which is currently an issue on Tuttle Road. And so as Allison mentioned, we're using the existing parking lot in front of Mableye as a additional queuing length. And there's also quite a bit of queuing length available for the Mableye, provided there's proper signage to direct parents to utilize a turnaround up at the middle school that was used during the pandemic. We thought that worked really well as far as getting traffic off of Tuttle Road. In addition to the to address the queuing issues, we've had a traffic engineer look at the site and get some existing counts and projected counts for the new populations. And they've made several recommendations for the improvements to Tuttle Road. For this, it would be consist of a turning lane for Tuttle Road, It would serve both the queuing entrance onto the new primary school, and it would also serve the existing road to the middle school. And this is the overall campus, and as you'll see that we go through various areas that are going to be used for parking for the individual schools. And the primary school, we've allocated a parking lot at the new parent drop-off loop and a portion of the Mabel I. Wilson parking lot, as well as utilizing some unused parking up at the high school where the Performing Arts Center is. And we chose that location because there's for staff parking because of the entrance on the upper level that can be used by staff. And, Mabel I. Wilson, we're utilizing some existing parking along the campus connector road, and we're expanding parking where the former softball field is currently now, and a portion of that softball field is also going to be used for the playground. And the middle school will pretty much have the same parking it did before. And the high school is the balance of the parking up at the Performing Arts Center, Osgood Drive, and behind the existing high school. And there's some additional parking going in for the central office as well. That's really just going to be an expansion of the existing driveway that runs through there now. And these are some of the off-site improvements that are recommended. On Main Street, we're proposing a dedicated left-hand turn lane for both the Osgood Drive and the Campus Drive entrances. The traffic study has determined that that was necessary and met all the warrants for that. The next improvement is over at Main Street and Tuttle Road in Blanchard. There's been some feedback we received that oftentimes the traffic backs up almost to the North Yarmouth line there, and a right-hand turn lane onto Blanchard would relieve that significantly, as well as some traffic signal improvements. And along with these improvements that we're proposing with the turn lanes and we're also looking at bike access too, so we've allotted for that. And the last segment on here is the Tuttle Road turn lane. Again, that's going to serve both the Mabel I. Wilson parking lot that's going to be used for parent drop-off, as well as getting into the middle school campus drive. There you go.
So we figured we'd end the discussion on this primary school with a few of the images that we've been working on for what this building might look like. We would say that this is kind of our interpretation. So materials could change, colors, those types of things, but we really wanted to make sure that this had a really good presence as you looked both from the street and from the internal campus drive. So this blue object in the front really kind of serves as that little piece of jewelry on a utilitarian school building. As we move around, you can see the grade change starting to head up on campus drive, and then mixing in some traditional brick architecture as well that really pays homage to the rest of the campus, really trying to be sympathetic to the environment that we're in. This is a view of the outdoor terrace that Allison had mentioned. We're envisioning some sort of some stone wall or something around that to help define that space and provide a safe spot for young learners to be outside. And then good visibility into the cafeteria as well. Looking at it from the opposite direction, it really demonstrates that there's some really good visibility out of that main office. That's that small rectangle that you see kind of on the left-hand side next to the blue box. We're looking at a small set of entry stairs and then a ramp to the right-hand side that would take you up to that terrace. Before we go on to Mabel I. Wilson, do we want to stop for questions, or should we get through the entire presentation and then open it up? Keep going. Up next is Mabel I. Wilson. We've got an intro elevation kind of the new secure entrance that we've been looking at. As we moved through, we did the same analysis on this building, taking a look at what the 3 grade levels that we're anticipating being in the facility, and then taking a look at what the largest enrollment is projected to be over the next 10 years. What we found for the 2nd grade was that it's 212 students in the 23-24 year. 3rd grade is 222 in that 24-25. And then 4th is 230, and that's that 2025 to 26. You notice that each one of those grade levels, the largest year is progressing by 1 year. And what this is demonstrating is something that you may be experiencing now is kind of a bubble class moving through the overall district. So, the largest class moving 1 year to the next to the next. So we've utilized those numbers as kind of the baseline to set the overall number of classrooms, both for the projected enrollment and then that long-term flexibility. So we're providing 11 2nd grade, a dozen of both 3rd and 4th. What that gives you is 220 student capacity for 2nd, 240 each for 3rd and 4th. If you take a look at what the projected enrollments are, again, we're leaving just in the general classroom spaces 8 to 10 students in that flexibility. At Mabel I, after some discussions, we've worked in 1 flex classroom. There are also some additional allied arts classrooms in this building that may be able to be repurposed. This is something that I think the addition is something that we're trying to manage the overall size, both on the impact to the overall site and also the cost of the total project in general. This is a diagram of how the improvements at Mabel I are envisioned. The gray space is your existing facility. These are spots where we're going to be doing 2 major pieces. So we're doing some building envelope upgrades. It was asked, and we took a look at your existing windows. They're in tough shape. Most of them don't operate safely. So those are all scheduled to be replaced. The other component within that existing building is your current sprinkler system. While adequate for what is there now, it doesn't meet today's standards. And with the amount of work that we're doing in there, it's going to require some pretty significant upgrades. So we've taken into account those upgrades, new ceilings, and then new LED lighting throughout. So we're going to be able to do some really good energy efficiency upgrades in addition to bringing up your sprinkler system to today's code. The orange areas are spaces that we're going to be doing some heavy renovations. If you're looking at the plan next to the existing art room, that's a space that's currently divided. We're going to make that one allied arts space. The cafeteria, what we're planning to do in there, we really need to provide capacity for your lunch period. So we're looking at taking out the stage, popping some windows to the outside, and really starting to make some really good improvements in that space for the quality of both the light and the air. So the other component with that, your air conditioning is non-existent in that space, and the existing air handling unit is kind of nearing the end of its useful life. So we're looking at replacing that and providing air conditioning through that renovation. The last area is the red adjacent to the main entrance. So that's the existing combination of admin suite and then a couple special education suites across the hall. The plan is to repurpose that to serve all of the growing administrative needs of the building. So providing appropriately sized offices, meeting spaces, and a larger nurses space that's going to be needed for the increased enrollment. The blue area, it represents a total of about 8 additional classrooms, general, a couple special education classrooms that Sarah will discuss, and then also a secure main entrance, and something that we've heard a lot as we've worked with many school districts around the state. Times are changing, so making sure that we have something where both visitors and parents are greeted at the front entrance by staff before being allowed into the building. What this means is about 8,800 square feet of renovation and about just under 20,000 square feet of new educational space. And almost all of it is directly related to education. So new classrooms, small group instruction spaces, and that small new entrance.
So we're going to walk through this space the same as we did before. As you can see in the blue outline, this is the new secure entrance that we've made. This building's a little tricky the way that it has so many levels on it. So approaching the way that we would address this is going to be sort of a two-part of it. So as you come in the main entrance there, to the left-hand side, there will be a check-in office that would be on that main entry level for handicapped accessibility into the main office space to check in. But then you go through into a much larger entry foyer, which works out nice for the number of students that you have coming into this building now. Before, it was really kind of condensed in this colonnade area up here, but we've been able to add this extra space, which allows a lot more freedom of flow for the students to come into the building. So as a visitor, you would come into this space here, check in here, you can come into the main office and up into the office, or you can come around into the ramping system as well to get into the office. So in that yellow area is where you see most of the administrative spaces. So the office space, the nurse space up to the north, as Tyler had mentioned, also some large conference spacing, some small conference spacing, teacher support spaces as well. So really in that hub of the central area would be the administrative wing. Up into the blue area, so this is the pathway that Allison was mentioning here along this spline. So this is the spline that continues all the way through up this ramp and to that back entrance here. So this is where students are coming in for the buses, and here's where they're coming through as the parent drop-off. We do have a central stair right here that brings students in, and then also there's going off to the left-hand side when you come in. So the way that this is laid out works out really well to bring children into the building and kind of separate out as they in age groups so that they're not all following the same path. So some of them can feed up this way into the upper grades, feed up this way into the second grades, and then come up the stairs for the third grade. So it really starts to separate the number of students coming down through this school. Hold on, we went ahead with the boxes. So the blue area represents the second grade. These classrooms have been sized to have bathrooms within the classroom themselves. And so we've added space for that to be a full 800 square foot classroom, not including the bathroom, so that there's space to spread children out in a COVID type of situation or things like that, making sure that the classrooms are sized appropriately for the children's play area in that space as well. The next area in the purple, you see these are small group learning spaces. So sort of a breakout area in the central part of the pod that's an open space with a teaching wall in here that can really act as an area to bring classrooms together. And then some additional small group learning spaces as well. Over in the green, we have the fourth grade in that area. And then again, centralizing the building, the special ed that supports all of the school as a whole. And we also do have some special ed also within the wings themselves. Over to the right-hand side, the gymnasium remains in the size that it is now. The library remains the size that it is now as well. And then this is the cafeteria space that Tyler was talking about that has been enlarged, and also the ability to just bring natural light to that space right now. It's just really kind of a dark space, and anytime we can bring more natural light into a learning environment is really important, especially for that space to be used for other activities outside of the lunchtime. And here we have Allied Arts, which are in their existing location currently. One of the things, before I go, how do you go back? One of the things that we didn't mention on here, in the center green spot right here, the way that the addition was put onto the building, this creates a courtyard, an inner courtyard within the space that can be accessed from all the different wings, both on this side and on this side, into that internal courtyard, which acts as a really great space for children to play, for active learning, for small groups to come in, and story times. There's all kinds of things that can happen within that space that will get further programmed when it goes further into design. This is the second story space, so again, accessed through this main stair here that comes in off the lower level up into this upper third grade area. and then also through the stair system that's down here that feeds off into the 4th. So 3rd grade and 4th graders sort of branching off as they come into the building. The brown area is the 3rd grade classrooms, and then the green is the 4th grade. This area also has some shared group learning out in that open area as well. And then this one in the center is the flex classroom that we spoke about, centralized again in between the different class spaces. And then some allied art space. The one in the upper by the purple is guidance, and then over to the left is one that has not been fully defined yet. One of the things about this plan is that they're very flexible as far as location. So if for some reason 3rd grade wanted to be where the 4th grade is, or vice versa, it's a very flexible plan to move the different grade levels around if we're, in the future you find that there needs to be a difference of how it was originally laid out. And then here, again, a special ed, additional special ed classrooms right in the wing so that they're not separated from the students too far. And that concludes the layout. Thank you.
So I think Allison and Jack have gone over this slide fairly well, but it's just quickly, I think the two areas that are important to see is that we've really tried to rebuild that playground space that you can see kind of on Plan North, and adjacent to it with the increased parking. So we won't spend much more time on this one. So moving forward on central office, this is something when we first programmed this out with the administrative staff, the addition really started to get to be pretty significant, and the costs were pretty high. So we took a circle back around and really dialed it into what the bare minimum would be, and then giving some flexibility in the future. So we've added a small addition to kind of the northern part of the side of the building. So the 3 additional offices, the conference room, and that specialized workroom / lunchroom, that's the addition. The rest of it we've tried to leave as much intact as we can. So the original suites are building where the administrative side is currently, we're leaving that untouched. Your existing conference room is going to become the central record space. It doesn't have windows, so it really serves well as kind of that secure records area. We've worked in a couple open office spaces for the special education department, and then the 2 green offices on the right-hand side would be to go to support that program as well. And then we have another, again, secure main entrance here, similar to what you have now, where they come in, greeted in a vestibule where they could be helped by an administrative assistant in the kind of the upper yellow piece, and then led into the waiting area if needed. So with the overall site here, Jack had mentioned that we've added about 17 parking spaces on that upper piece on the exit drive, and then we relocated the central office to face Main Street, while also still trying to maintain as many of those historic trees on Main Street as we can. So we're trying to be sympathetic to both the historic nature of both the Sweetser building and the existing look on Main Street. So that's the end of the presentation. So we're going to move into the overall project budget next. So I've broken this out into 4 different components. We've got the 3 individual projects that we have spoken about with the primary school, Mabel-I, and central office. And then we've broken out the offsite improvements, because those are really almost a standalone project when we start getting these out to bid. You'll see on the next slide and in your packet that there's a further breakdown of what's in each one of these pieces. But the way that the estimates are generally set up, Part A includes all of the items that go into the construction of the building. So it's going to be all of the actual general contractor costs, the site development costs, utilities, all of those things that go into actually constructing the building. Part B, the administrative cost and reserves. That includes everything from the land purchase prices. It includes movable equipment, so furniture, technology, all of those things that if you flipped the building upside down and shook it, everything that fell out kind of falls into that movable equipment piece. It also includes the administrative reserves. So we've got some money in there to pay for connections to central main power, water, telephone, data, those types of things. And then another big component in there as well are the 2 contingencies that we carry. We carry a 5% bid contingency that helps to cover any of those market volatilities that we see. Very evident right now if you're following construction markets, the other being the construction contingency for anything that becomes unforeseen throughout the course of the project. Part C is fees and services, so that's everything that is needed to get the project through the design, permitting, and construction phase. So it has the architecture and engineering fees. We've got money in there for clerk of the works, construction testing, all of those things that happen administratively throughout the course of the project. So working from left to right, the construction at the primary school is just over $32 million. So that includes all of those constructions. We have had some discussions with the administrative staff about some sustainability features. We're planning on geothermal, which is a fantastic opportunity here where we're looking at a fully air-conditioned building. It really sets up some really good efficiencies there. Moving down to the administrative cost and reserves, that's at $7.5 million. That includes your land purchase prices and all of those other things that I mentioned. Part C, the 3.5, bringing up 43.7 is right about where we are for that primary school. Mabel I, we're looking at about $12.5 million of addition and improvements within the building. We've got the 2.2 set aside for the administrative cost reserves and just around 1.5 for fees and services for a total of the 16.1, almost 2. Central office, we are looking at a total project cost of the $1.7 million. So that includes actually moving the building on campus, includes new foundations, basement for that space. A big cost of this is actually getting that area ready for the building with utilities, so making sure that we have water, sewer, power, all of those components over to that spot. And then the administrative cost of reserves, there are a small contingency, and again, small amount for the design and permitting side is that. One of the things that's actually kind of been increasing as we've moved through this project and started to engage the town, the Department of Transportation, our traffic engineers, those offsite improvements that Jack mentioned. So we're really touching kind of 3 major parts of the surrounding surface streets with improvements, with those turn lanes, and then the traffic intersection work at Main, Tuttle, and Blanchard. And that's all in just under $2.3 million. So with this, as we've discussed tonight and all of the discussions that we've had with administration, the facilities group, and all of those things, we're looking at a total project cost of just under $64 million. Won't go through each one of these lines in detail, but we wanted to make sure that in your packet you had a little bit of a breakdown on how those things added up and what the breakdown for those different components were. It's tough to see a $7.5 million line item without understanding what those individual pieces are. The last thing we wanted to do before we open this up for discussion is go through the schedule. This is what's been provided both from administration and bond counsel on what it's going to take to get through out to a referendum in November 2nd. So I won't go through all of the individual dates, but feel free to peruse as you review this in more detail. For us, the next couple of major milestones is making any adjustments to the scope and budget over the next few weeks, leading up to the August 2nd meeting with the 2 select boards and your entity to kind of go through this in more detail. And that's our presentation.
Thank you so much. So I'd like to open it up to the board for questions. This is a lot of information for new members, I'm sure. So I didn't know if anybody wants to start, or I can just kind of go down the line. You want to go, Peter?
Yeah, just actually one question. What is the square footage of the new primary school?
All in with all the educational and utility spaces, it's right around 74,500 square feet.
So if you add that, you add the 20,000 of new space on Wilson, we're talking about 95,000 square feet, more or less of, quote, new space. So whether we did, again, just a rough thing, to solve the space problem, we're going to need 90,000 square feet, and it may be a new primary school plus Wilson, or if it had been done in another site, we would still be talking 90,000 square feet, but a different configuration. Is that a, I mean, it's very general, but is that a, make sense?
Yeah, it does. I think most of you know we got pretty far along in the planning process when we were looking at alternative sites. And when we had programmed that one out with the larger population, the need for multiple gyms, large cafeterias, a lot of special education space, I think we were looking at close to 110,000 square feet. So what we're able to provide on the campus utilizing existing infrastructure has really led to a little bit of inefficiency, or a little bit of efficiencies, excuse me. So
Thank you.
You're correct.
Thank you.
Tyler?
Yes, go ahead.
Okay. I always have a list of questions, I guess. So I guess my first question, Tyler, is when do we expect the doors would be open on this construction?
Yep, so I think the preliminary schedule that we had worked out earlier, if it goes to referendum in November as planned, you know, it's about a year, a little bit more than a year to get through the permitting process, get all of our stuff in place for DEP, DOT, all of those entities that need to weigh in. So that kind of gets us through most of 2022 out to bid in 23. And then about a little over 2 years of construction. We're going to be able to hit that, you know, with a great bid period, getting it out to bid in January, February, and about 2 years of construction. So it's at 25.
So it would be the fall of 2025 is what we're saying?
Correct.
Okay.
The way that we had envisioned this, we would look to get traffic improvements, all of those things out to bid as quickly as possible to minimize the escalation that we're going to experience. We think we can get both the central office relocated and the Mabel I. Wilson improvements done probably the year before, maybe start an addition in the summer. That way we're really taking advantage of as much of that early money as we can and limiting construction escalation. So we would do this likely as 4 individual projects.
Okay. When looking at the parking on the campus, did we take into account parking for our high school students that drive to school?
We did, yes.
And are we decreasing the number of spots for them quite a bit by the way that it's set up?
I don't believe we decreased it at all.
It looks like it was increased.
Oh, for student parking?
Well, overall it was increased, it seemed like.
I guess why I say that is on the GCA, some of the student parking is there, so the primary school would be parking there, so.
Yeah, I think overall the parking increased on the campus. Let me see if I can find that number.
Okay, so we're including the student parking
Correct.
when we're looking at those numbers?
Yeah, central office gave us, based on this year's enrollment, some rough ideas on what you were experiencing for that student parking.
Okay, that sounds good.
Yeah, and we're looking at about just under 60 additional spaces somewhere on campus being programmed in.
Which would make sense because we'll have additional teachers and support staff with having a new building as well.
Absolutely.
My next question would be I think I have a little bit of concern with the Mabel Wilson School in only having one flex classroom set up. And have we looked at, I would just hate for all this work to go into that school and then we outgrow it as soon as we kind of move in. So have we looked at kind of the projections after 2025? Because the numbers here, it kind of gives you that rolling large bubble class.
Yeah, that large bubble class kind of exits Mabel I in 25, 26.
Right, and that's when we're opening the doors kind of for that.
So we've based how we've sized those classrooms kind of on the worst case for each grade level. So there are no projections higher than what we've based, and we were still able to give that 8 to 10 students additional buffer above and beyond that kind of max projection. I don't think there's been a new projection since this one was done, so it's best available data that we're working with.
Okay. And I think my last question may be for Peter or for you, Tyler, is when we were When we've gone through this process in previous meetings this year, we've talked about doing renovations to athletic fields and athletic buildings, and also there was talk about doing some work at the high school and finishing up renovations there and possibly the pool. It appears with these numbers that we're not including it here. Is that something, or where does that stand?
I think the presentation tonight was just related to the campus thing. I think we've got numbers on the field, and I'm not sure about the other stuff. When we get finished the discussion, I think at the end of the day that next week the Finance Committee and the Facilities Committee are going to sit down and digest this thing to see what next steps. And I think Jeff has got numbers for the other stuff, but I think given the numbers that we're seeing right now, that much of any addition we'll have to talk about, but again, that's a board decision. So I think the key after we get done with the comments here is to, again, have finance and facilities sit down and digest this.
Great, that makes sense, Peter. Do you have something, Jeff?
No, I was just going to add what Peter just add on to it, and we do have an estimate of $1.5 million for a turf field if that was something the board was interested in pursuing. The other components, such as looking at the pool and things like that, are part of the long-range facilities plan, and we would certainly be introducing that again at the Town Council and Select Board joint board meeting on August 2nd, and preview the whole presentation before Oak Point opens up with that, just to make sure people realize this is part of a long-range plan that doesn't encompass everything. These are the most immediate needs, obviously.
Thank you, Jennifer. Mike?
Yeah. Thank you, Tyler and team. Really appreciated the thoroughness. Appreciated working with you with the Facilities Committee. I heard you drop the term geothermal when you're talking about inclusion in construction costs. Is that built, you said that's built into the costs that you put in there?
Yes, it is.
So there'd be it's the heating and air is run through a geothermal system, is that right?
Correct. I think the preliminary calculations, it's somewhere around 60 to 70 wells that would be drilled kind of around that front part of the campus. What we've done is we've sized it for air conditioning. So there may be some shoulder areas where we pick that up with an internal combustion boiler of some sort that we're likely going to have anyways in the building. So it was a pretty significant jump to go to all heating on that side. So we kind of used some best judgment on that one.
That's great. And you also mentioned other efficiency improvements, so windows and such. And but in the new construction, did you build in higher efficiency windows and other items into the cost?
Yeah, we haven't gone as far as something like a triple pane window with just the amount of glass that we're looking at. It's a pretty significant increase, but we're looking at the best windows that we can get within that kind of standard range. They're usually pretty good efficiency. We were looking at increasing our wall and roof insulation as far as we can. So those are two big pieces that we can do to really push that load reduction. In all of our buildings, we're looking at really high performing air vapor barrier systems that are integrating into those glass and insulation systems. And that goes a long way when we start eliminating that air infiltration. It goes a long way to help reduce those costs. We've also factored in on the roof structure and internal setup, making sure that the building is PV ready. So being able to add photovoltaics to pretty much that entire roof. It gives you really some really good acreage there for electric generation on site with an all electric building. Really lends itself well to that.
You assumed my next question, so I appreciate that, probably because I've asked it about 4 times of you. The other part of that question, though, you mentioned roof upgrades to Mabel Wilson. Is it possible to do the same to make Mabel Wilson PV ready?
We certainly can easily in the addition. So as we start moving through the rest of the building, you have to take a pretty hard look at what the impacts are going to be on the snow loading. So, I mean, we can certainly take a look at that. We are going to have the majority of ceilings down, so if we're strategic on how we do it, we can take a look at what we would need to do engineering-wise to make that safe.
Okay. Yeah, that's all I want to ask on that. The only other thing is, when the offsite improvements, so it seems like it's a bit, I don't know, somewhat far, the right turn lane onto Blanchard, but is that truly something that came up, that came up in discussions with the town, you mentioned? And so it's
Yes.
the existence of the one campus model is creating a traffic flow issue?
Right.
Okay, all right, so apologies for thinking out loud here. I'm just trying to probe in my own brain if that is a nice to have or a must have, and it sounds like it's probably closer towards the latter.
Yeah, I'll defer to Jack, correct me if I'm wrong, but we're going to be required to submit for a traffic movement permit, and that's going to be kind of the extent of where they make us look. Our traffic engineers already weighed in on this and agreed that this is likely something that they're going to direct us toward. Is that a fair statement, Jack? Yeah, that's correct. Okay, thank you.
Okay, thanks.
Who else? Anne, would you like to?
A lot of my questions have already been asked by everyone, so thank you for that. But I did want to ask, I'm seeing here that in the breakdown for art acquisition, that there's only funds allotted to the primary school and not Mabel Wilson or central office. And I can understand perhaps central office, but I'm wondering if there would be a way, if we could think about ways to kind of have some art that carries over between the primary school to Mabel I. Wilson to kind of give it a more, as you're growing into these buildings, and that also that this art be, that we keep in mind that it is diverse and reflects our goals of equity and inclusion.
Certainly. Yeah, well, I mean, we've carried it kind of in the new construction. It's something that, the state would fund up to that $50,000. But if you want to put it in the Mabel I, we're certainly, happy to do that.
Madison or Vanessa or Jason? You guys can.
With the roads, is that state roads or town roads that they're going to be requesting for them? Or were we going to get state funding with those roads? Or like, is it highway roads that you're
take that, Jack?
referring to? Is it the state?
Main Street is Route 9, which is a state road.
So they would be able to contribute?
No, and the cost for this is a result of the school, not the state, so.
Okay,
more than
even if
likely
it's a
it'll be
state
that.
road?
Yeah.
Okay, because we're.
They don't usually contribute towards that. The improvements at Main Street in Tuttle, Blanchard are kind of a worst-case scenario at this point. We've carried some traffic controller improvements as well as the turning lane, sidewalks, and bike lane through there.
Okay, and that would have to be approved at the state level for that
Yeah,
traffic
once you're into
flow
a traffic
pattern.
movement permit, they have the ability to reach out up to, I think, a mile or two
Okay.
and analyze different intersections. And any private developer would have to go through the same thing.
Okay, thank you.
Jason?
I don't want to get too far into details of this and that, but the flex rooms that are in the primary school, I think on the second floor, like next to each room, there's like a half a room. What is that used for? And could two of those be paired up so that in the future there's more flex space, like those two half rooms could become a full room down the road when we need even more space? That's,
Yeah, let me see if I can get back to that plan.
I don't want to get into the weeds too much, but.
These are good questions. So.
Yep, there. So the blue area is between the green rooms.
I think you're talking this one. And,
Yeah.
Yeah, so those are almost the kind of the anti-spaces. We've kind of turned it coming around Campus Drive. And I mean, certainly something we can take a look at maybe combining those. It'll change the layout, but it's not off the table. I mean, these are kind of the concept level, and we'll dial into more detail as we get going. I think the big thing about those is those are really, I think, going to serve a lot of different functions, from special education to small group instruction to just small breakout areas for smaller parts of class. So I think those are certainly things we should discuss as we move into more detail with the staff.
Right. Those flex spaces make sense to me now. I'm just thinking down the road when we need to create 2 more rooms, if they're next to each other, there you go. There's more space. That's a lot of square footage. On a square foot basis, how does this project compare to others that have been built similarly in our area?
Yeah, I think it's pretty on par with a lot of the publicly funded ones. The state's a little bit more tight with their square footage, so they probably wouldn't have given you those flex spaces. So those are going to kind of drive up that square footage per student piece. But you know, we start all of these analysis pieces with a comparative piece with what we think the state would give, and we're in the ballpark. This project is likely more square footage per student, though, for some of those things.
Do we have any of that data for schools?
I can get it for you, certainly.
That would be great to see. I know a little bit about, like, when this conversation started in North Yarmouth, and we went pretty far down that path. But you said that project was up to 110,000 square feet. We're doing 95,000 here. So obviously greater square footage, but on a cost basis, do we know how that would compare if we went that route? And I'm just looking at it from the standpoint of general construction. When you add on to something, it's significantly more expensive to add on than to build new. And just in very round numbers, I'm looking at the primary school, comes out to $586 a foot, versus Mabel I. Wilson additional square footage comes out to $809. So that's a big premium on that square footage. So I'm thinking, you know, if this were in North Yarmouth and without, you know, paying a premium for the land and not paying a premium for additional off-site costs, the extra turn lanes and that sort of thing, what would the number actually be if it were there? And I'm not necessarily advocating for that. I think there's a lot of efficiencies in scale in having it on one complex. However, sort of dividing the assets also could make sense. So if you could.
Yeah, I don't think we got to the point where we had a full project budget, and that really was pre-COVID as well, and we've seen a pretty drastic increase. So I don't think I can speak to what the overall project budget would have been for that project. And I think I'd defer back to administration on the ability to actually get land in North Yarmouth. I think, you know, we put out ads, we talked to everyone that came forward, and really past the Memorial School site, I don't think we had a viable option in North Yarmouth. So that's how we really ended up here. And with that additional land on the campus, it really became a much more viable option.
Yeah. So is it fair to say that since we couldn't find a place in North Yarmouth to make it happen, that we're paying a bit of a premium to put it onto this complex? Because
I don't think I can answer that question.
Okay, and event parking, has that been planned for as far as football games, soccer games, which are going to bring large numbers of people? Has that been calculated into what we would see?
I think that area likely isn't going to change much. It's utilizing existing surface parking at the high school. So I think we've added additional parking on campus for those, you know, that could be used for those things, but I'm not sure we've changed anything on the high school side. Is that clear, Jack? Okay, sorry.
Okay, thank you. That's it. Much appreciated.
Tom, did you have some questions?
Yeah, so I have one question in particular. And first of all, thank you for your comprehensive presentation. You've given us a lot to think about. My main question is about the impact on the Mabel I. Wilson community while this work is being done. Do you have a sense of what that might look like, both in terms of how long this will be disruptive and in what ways it'll be disruptive for students and teachers?
Sure, I think we're looking at somewhere, you know, an 18-month-ish construction period for Mabel I. I think the area where it will be the most impact is trying to get, we call them summer slams, so all that work done at the main entrance in the lobby, kind of done in one summer to a place that we can get, you know, safely occupied in there. So that'll probably be the most disruptive piece. You know, we've often worked with districts to kind of shift school calendars to get a extra week or two on either end of construction projects to help buy that time. We've been able to do that in the past. So I think that's the area that will be the most impact on them. Throughout the course of the school year, while there's an ongoing construction project happening, you will hear, you know, rotary hammers, some other things that are going to cause disruption. But I think the key thing for us will be making sure that our specifications are really tight on when they can do and what, that utility shutdowns are coordinated, that we build a really good relationship with your in-school leadership team and the kind of the day-to-day construction team as well. We've done a number of these where we've actually built schools, you know, almost on top of other ones. We did it over in Portland at Hall School, the new Amanda Rowe. So we can manage these things through some careful planning and good relationships, I think, and tight construction documents.
Thank you.
Kevin?
Thanks. Yeah, wonderful job tonight. Appreciate you walking us through this. I think the challenge is looking at the pictures on paper, certainly on the screen in front of us. A number of us had that opportunity to travel with you to some of the other buildings that you built. And so some of those pull-out spaces and I think the creative and innovative way that you embed those into classrooms, as we were able to watch students work within those and not have to leave that learning environment, was very, very powerful. The things that you did over in Falmouth were innovative, functional, and the flow was exquisite. I think that if and when this moves forward, I think that type of a tour to help any of the members of this board to continue to understand what you do is important. The outside spaces that Allison put together down at the Amanda Rowe School are certainly a testament to what can happen in outdoor learning. So I again would advocate for that. But then, since you didn't ask, the things that keep me up at night are looking at the spaces. And as you drive through many of the streets in both of these communities, you see a lot of new construction. And I'm that nerd that looks at those and sees 2 kids in every one of these new homes. I am also that person that remembers what happened 5 years after the ice storm in 1998 with the bubble that followed that. And so I don't know if we'll have a COVID surge that follows this, but it's, that's going to be, 2027? It could be large numbers, and these just feel awfully tight to me. And I just can't, I know I bring it up every time that we talk, Tyler, but it's a concern of mine. Have any words of wisdom to allay my fears?
Well, unfortunately, I can't control how many people move to your district.
You don't want to go home by home?
Or houses being built.
Put the message out, will you?
You know, I think, on our side, we try to work with the best available data. So, looking at these projections, trying to build in that flexibility. We've kept the class sizes as low as we can. We know that this is a commitment that the district's made. There are some, things that could be done. I'm not going to say it because I know that it's a touchy subject, but class sizes could increase if you had a small bubble. So I think there are things that you could do to manage this within a building. And then I think, with this primary school, we've got the ability to add another 2 to 4 classrooms on the end of it with the amount of space that's left. So, if you do see a drastic, increase in 5 years from that COVID surge, there is the ability to kind of keep making that improvement within the facility. So hopefully the planning and the numbers that we were given, hold, and we've got some good flexibility in there for you.
Thank you.
I guess last thing on that, I recall you also said before about adding on to where you could add on those buildings at the end, that you would allow, when you complete this project, to keep like the utilities where that would be easily accessible instead of capping the lines and that.
Yes. Yeah, that's what we typically do.
Awesome. You done?
Yeah, I just, my last thing is that the renderings really, I know they're preliminary, but they look fantastic.
Sorry.
Most of the questions that I had, of course, have been asked and answered. I do have one kind of simple, maybe more detailed question. The parent drop-off on Tuttle Road, you had mentioned it's wide enough for a 2-way there. Are we saying that people are going to be coming in both sides, or coming in 2 different ways and dropping off students? Because that seems to be a little hairy.
No, it's wide enough for 2, but both of those cars are kind of going in.
So it's one direction. Gotcha.
Yeah.
Thank you. Because that made me nervous.
Good
I
question.
knew you thought of that, but I just didn't understand it. And then central office orientation. Will that be facing Main Street, the way that it's facing Tuttle now?
Yes, so we would keep the historic piece, face it to Main Street, be sympathetic on that side.
Yeah.
The entrance would be on the back side, though.
Okay, towards the parking lot.
Correct.
Okay. And the last thing, I just want to say thank you. The renderings make us really, or like I'll speak for myself, make me really excited because it feels a little bit more real after 2 years almost. And I also just wanted to give you the feedback. I really appreciate centralizing the special ed and pull-out spaces. I think just the comment of every kid gets to walk to the same space or has the same walk to those spaces is really, it means a lot. And I just appreciate that thoughtfulness in the planning. Does Jason?
Sorry. What happens, maybe this is a question more for Jeff, if we, with the volatility of cost of materials and all that, what happens if we go outside of the 5% cushion that's built in? And then other question along the lines of someone else brought up, sort of, if we outgrow this site, you know, if the growth in town continues within the existing site, can you see very generally where we have more room for growth? Where's the next logical step? Does it fit within this land that we own with this project?
I think barring more acquisition, that something meaningful would be very difficult on this campus. Yeah. You know, we could do smaller additions at the middle school or Maple Eye or something along those lines, but I don't think you're putting another new building on this campus.
I don't know the pre-K, but if we do get into that bubble, is pre-K an option to be removed? No, it stays.
Unless, well, I don't know, maybe you speak.
I mean, if we get to ease Kevin at night.
Well, thank you.
Is that an opportunity there for a temporary, or would that just cause more stress on the community?
I think the pre-K program that we have is collaborative. It's a collaborative program right now with CDS, Child Development Services. And, you know, it's a relationship that we have right now with them in order to provide the program that we have, which is regular education and special education students in the same program. It doesn't mean that the board can't revisit this down the road. It really depends on what the state is doing. I know this program proposal basically says, even if the state were to, let's just say, mandate 4-year-olds go to public school at some point, the legislature has talked about this for years and years and years, and the current governor has been talking about it. What we're saying through this project design is that we're not expanding our pre-K program in the public school setting. We would partner, if we were mandated, we would partner with private organizations that already exist or would exist in the community to provide that pre-K. And by doing this design the way we did with only 2 classrooms, we're signaling, you know, to the public that's the approach that we would take if the state mandates 4-year-olds to go to public school. And every indication is from the state, if they mandated it, they would certainly be encouraging private partnerships.
Okay.
In fact, they've been talking about that for a long time.
Right, thank you.
So that's a decision the board is making by accepting this design.
Thank you. Peter?
Yeah, I think it's kind of important as looking at the big picture again to the what public is watching, is that this particular plan developed as a result of us being able to have an option to purchase on that 2.5 acre piece. That brought about advantages, i.e. That we had the ability to access power. We had the hook onto the town sewer system and the water system. But, and also, as Jason and several have mentioned, that there are some efficiencies with a on-campus location. As we've seen in this, as we've gone down into the weeds, that there also are some limitations with doing this. The first limitation being that we were limited in size as far as how big the new elementary school could be, so that it probably, without really messing things up, was pretty much limited to a maximum of 70 to 75,000 square feet, which meant that unlike what we did in North Yarmouth, that did require us, with the additional classrooms, to put that addition on Wilson. I'm not sure we anticipated it was that much, but again, we're talking about that 90 to 100,000 square feet necessary. Now, a couple of other disadvantages popped up at the same time, that with more students on this campus, it did, as we knew it probably would be, create traffic issues, and so thus resulting the about of $2 million that we're going to have to spend to mitigate traffic concerns because of the limitations of that size. The second thing that popped up was the fact that we would have to move the administration building. And this is where you get into a political situation, that this was a, quote, historic structure that had a lot of meaning to the Cumberland community and the Historical Society, so that this was one of these political things that pops up, that in a cruel society, the wrecking ball would have come in and we would have found some space, but again, that was not an option. So it's kind of one of these things that there's no free lunch out of this, that this is what it was given the location of the campus, and other situations would occur with other implications, as we found out in North Yarmouth. So this was a plan put together to fit the constraints we had with putting it on the campus and being able to have everything together. And for the needs and all this thing, this was probably the best thing that we could come up with, given the limitations that we were dealt with. Whether ultimately that does, we'll be going through a process. But I think it's important for the public to understand that, you know, there's no free lunch in this deal, that it's still square footage, square footage, square footage.
Thank you, Peter. Kevin?
Yeah, just to echo Peter, I mean, we did an exhaustive search for property, and I've got to tell you, in communities like these, where we're surrounded by so much land, the fact that we could find nothing that was suitable, nothing that would meet all of the criteria that we were looking for. Now, I don't think at the time we ever envisioned that opportunity to be able to harness the economies of scale that we have within this one campus model. And I think it was a unique opportunity. I think that, again, my fear is what happens in beyond the 10 years and the 20 years. But land that we couldn't find now isn't going to pop up over time and become more attractive. So if we're able to do the very best that we can to expend the public money in the best way possible to provide the greatest educational experience, but then the way that you've talked about this time and time again, of building these buildings in such a way that you can scale them within the constraints that we have of land, I think is important. So it will save us money as we look forward, and yeah, do the best that we can.
Thank you, Kevin. Does anybody else have any questions? I just wanted to just remind everyone that's listening, and also the board, of the kind of what steps are next. And I know that you guys put this timeline in there, but on August 2nd, we will be having a joint board meeting with Select Board in North Yarmouth the town council in Cumberland, and of course this board, and Oak Point will be joining us, so thank you for joining us then. And then right after school starts, we will be having a couple of public input nights. We're working on making those family friendly so that people can bring their kids and really engage in the conversation so we can meet the needs of the community and answer questions. So I just wanted to make sure that people are aware of those dates, and we'll be putting out more information about those as well. Thank you.
Thank you all.
We'll see you in a couple weeks.
Yes.
Okay, so Jeff is next with superintendent's report. And I don't believe we're putting it on here, or we are. Oh, okay. Thank you all.
Yep, that's what I put it on. I might have to do it again.
Thank you, Dirk.
All right, good evening. I've got superintendent's report tonight. Just to update, first of all, on the midsummer update. I don't even think it's midsummer yet, so we won't say it. Basically, the Going to Green plan, just to make sure that we're keeping everyone updated, and this will be published as well in my blog this week, starting tomorrow. Even though school's out for the summer, we have a lot of activity going on the campus right now. We are getting ready for the beginning of the school year. We do that all summer. So in addition to all the normal cleaning and maintenance projects that we typically do during a given summer, and all the deep cleaning of every space in our district, we are adding 11 more modular classrooms to the district, as well at Mabel Wilson School and GMS, as you know. Some of those modulars are already on site. We're also doing site work right now at the middle school to prepare for those modulars as well. And we have finished, pending your approval tonight, this evening, we have finished hiring all of the 10 additional teacher positions that were vacant as a result of adding those positions for COVID and keeping class sizes smaller for the next year. So I have some photos for you, and we'll certainly be have a lot more coming up. I also have a link that will be in the blog going out. It's the same link to the same letter that I sent out on June 14th, because nothing has changed in terms of our opening of school plan. That plan remains the same. The questions I've been asked recently, the biggest question I keep getting asked is, will people have to wear masks, or will vaccinated students have to wear, or unvaccinated students have to wear masks and vaccinated students not? The answer is the same one on June 14th, is that the state has said no masks are required in our schools, whether in or out, and we are not requiring masks of anyone come the first day of school on September 1st. So that is the update as of the 19th of July. So we're moving forward with smaller class sizes. We filled teacher positions. The modulars are starting to come on campus. They're being rehabbed by Schiavi right now, and we are going to continue that process during the summer, the next few weeks. And the plan that was approved by the board in June, and the letter that went out on June 14th to parents has not changed. So some photos we have the just kind of the usual waxing and cleaning that we do. This was just examples of what the custodians and maintenance crew do each summer. This is a photo of one of our new modular units that's being rehabbed on site. This is a photo of the existing modular unit, which we have at Mabel I. Wilson School. And as you recall, for enrollment purposes for this particular unit, we're adding 2 classrooms in the middle of that unit. So Schiavi had to open the entire unit up, and they'll be inserting 2 more classrooms into the middle of it, and then closing that entire unit back up. So they're in the process, obviously, of doing that right now. One thing that I've been saying for a year now, is that the Commons really need a repaint. And if you've been through it recently, you probably would agree, although we, our custodial and maintenance crew just finished repainting that room, and it looks a lot better. I will say, if you go in there, if you've been in there recently, you're probably like, we really tried to clean that room up and try to make it a lot more attractive here at the high school. And again, this is just a photo of some site work. The MLTI update, and Dirk will enjoy this update since he's our technology director. There was some question marks about, as you remember, during the budget process, as to whether or not the MLTI program would be continuing in the state, and if the state legislature would be supportive of that program, which has been around for over 20 years. And thankfully, the state came through, and we have signed on for 329 new student Chromebooks for grades 7 and 8. And we will be using them, obviously, at the middle level. Those are, dare I say it, free of charge, because we are signing on to the state agreement for the Chromebook, so we're not paying any extra funds for that. That was the offer that the state had made, and we're going with that offer, as we had mentioned earlier. We're also purchasing an additional 73 Chromebooks for student and staff use that we need beyond that. And we're using about half of the amount of money that we budgeted in the budget as flex money. If the board recalls, there was $50,000 that we placed in the budget for flex money, because we didn't know what was going on with MLTI, if we're going to have to lease the machines, if the state was coming through or not. So we're spending around $26,000 of that $50,000 to purchase those additional machines, beyond the 329 that the state is basically gifting to our district. So very small bargain to pay for not having to lease these machines and getting them outright from the state. So this is probably the best resolution that we could have come up with. We didn't come up with it, that the state came up with for districts in Maine, and we were able to take advantage of that. So that's a great outcome. Dirk, would you agree with that? I would agree too. We were very worried about that a few months ago. And as Tyler mentioned, Tyler and Mike, obviously we're meeting people at the farmers market. We've got a photo of them in our blog. If there's other board members that would like to attend the farmers market with Tom Gruber or whoever the counselor of the market day is, we'd certainly love to have you up there as well. Energy project update. We get reports from Siemens Industry as to the continued savings that we have. I think now this project has been in place for 6 years in our district, and we continue to make huge gains in a lot of the energy projects. The payback for this project has exceeded the accumulated savings of what we were promised by Siemens 6 years ago, and we're up 52% over what they had originally promised as a payback for all of the LED upgrades that were made at the schools, and all of the building envelope upgrades that were made at the schools 6 years ago. So we're continuing to see savings on our energy from a project from many years ago. So I'll continue to keep you updated as we continue to get those reports. The spring season obviously is over. Rangers girls lacrosse team was a state Class B runner-up. I'd like to say congratulations to all of our athletic teams. I know it was kind of up and down again with COVID during the spring season. The spring season was a little more typical than the other 2 seasons during the year. Our kids performed admirably, did a great job, and very proud of all of our sports teams. And that is my report for this evening. So again, the blog will be out, should be out tomorrow, published tomorrow, for people to get that update on going to green.
Awesome. Thank you, Jeff. Committee reports. Finance, Kevin.
Thank you. The biggest thing to report is that we will be having that joint meeting next week with the fine folks from Finance to take a deeper look at the numbers that were proposed tonight. And then ideally, we'll be able to come back with some insight to the rest of the board that will help with the decision-making process as we move forward.
Thank you. Policy, Ann?
No major updates, so I did just want to let the community know, since there is a lot of interest in policy ACA, that as the process moves forward, I'll be sure, or someone else will be sure to pass on any additional information for opportunities to give feedback and to be involved in the discussion. One thing that I also wanted to note is that our policy, Ann Chapman from Drummond Woodson, has actually taken it to the state so that it could be used by other districts throughout the state as well. Again, not necessarily in its current version, but with some work done in the future, and I think that that is a really wonderful thing.
Thank you, Ann. Facilities, Peter,
Nothing
you have anything
further.
else? Okay. Curriculum, we don't have anything for this evening. Student reports? Oh, maybe we'll catch her when she comes back. We do have ad hoc committee reports, and I will just mention, because of the interest in the community, that the Equity Committee has continued to meet throughout the summer, and we have set our 2 July and August dates. They are July 27th at 4 p.m. and August 17th at 4 p.m. Both of those meetings are, as with all of our committee meetings, open to the public to observe our work as a committee, and they will be held at the Greeley shade structure at the recess area. So we just wanted to make sure the community knows that those meetings are happening. Yeah, go ahead.
Just from the communications committee, just really quickly related to what Jeff was saying, is that we're going to have a frequently asked questions and FAQ doc about getting back to school out to the public in early to mid-August. So trying to anticipate as many questions as possible, but it will be a living document. So obviously the questions that we miss, we will add in there.
Awesome. Thank you. Madison, as you're coming back to the stage, I didn't know if you had any summer student reports that you would like to share.
No, not particularly.
Okay.
You guys kind of yanked me out of my summer. So rude. Oh my goodness. No, but I have been on summertime. I came into this and I was like, I'm not going to know anything that's happening. But it was mostly about a school that I knew was getting built. So proud to know where I was.
Thank you,
but
Madison.
yeah, nothing in particular. I know that the freshman orientation is starting soon, and I'm fortunate enough to be one of the leaders, and I'm very excited about that. And I know that a lot of others are too, and I hope that will be fun for the freshmen, but not too much.
You're doing what you're supposed to be doing on summertime. Awesome. Thank you, Madison. All right, and then moving on to items for action. Do I have we were hoping to see Avery this evening. We do have a new junior student representative because we now no longer have Elias, and we now have a senior representative. And for those of you that aren't familiar with Avery, he was the student that made all of the picnic tables and came in, and we did a recognition for him. And I'm really excited that he is going to be joining the board with us. So,
Tyler,
yes.
Could you explain how this process is?
Sure.
And what type of things he had to do to come forth to be nominated?
Sure. So I actually wasn't part of that.
Was.
Sure, I wasn't part of that process. Jeff, would you mind?
Yeah. Margo Harrington was the board representative for the board in helping with the selection. So there was an interview committee or selection committee for junior representative. There was several students that came forward. We interviewed 4 students, if I remember correctly, this was a month ago, 4 or 5 students, and it was the high school principal at the time, Chris Hoffman, Margo Harrington from the board, myself, Madison served on the committee, and then, am I missing someone? I feel like I'm missing someone. That's it. So we interviewed the students, the juniors, rising juniors, who were interested in participating as a student representative, and at the end of the process, the group selected Avery after asking, we had several questions for each applicant. They did a great job. Every single one of them did a great job answering the questions, and it was a real interview. We went through that whole process with each one of them. A couple of students expressed interest in serving in other committees after they were told they weren't going to be the student representative. So we do have a couple students who applied, who will actually be joining other committees, such as a policy, there's interest in policy. I think we had a student interested in the equity committee, et cetera. And we've done that in the past. These are students who are really committed to public service and helping out. So we're excited to put forward Avery's name tonight, and also to let you know other students will be joining other committees. But Madison, do you want to add something?
I mean, all I really could add was all of the people that we interviewed were really strong applicants, and it came down to more of a it was very nitpicky of what made Avery stand out compared to everyone else. So I think that he's a really good fit, and I'm excited to see what he has to bring to the board. But yeah.
Yeah, I'm always excited about this process and the students that are interested in participating and really enjoy public service. And as usual, we had a good interest this year. So.
I think it's great that we have students on our board. Were you going to say something?
I was going to give you a motion if you wanted one.
I would love one, thank you.
I would love to make a motion to approve Avery Olson as junior student representative for 2021-22.
Second.
Any discussion? I think we did it. All in favor? Thank you. And then the second, looking for a motion to approve hiring professional positions, which we can do in all in one motion.
So moved.
Second.
Any discussion?
I would just ask if, Jeff, there's anything that you'd like to highlight about any of the 3 candidates?
Yep, the first 2 is a grade 4 1-year only and a grade 3 1-year only. These positions are COVID related in terms of keeping class sizes small, as you know, the commitment of the board to hiring the 10 additional positions. So these are the last 2 of the 10 positions. The administrators have been very pleased, as I have been, in doing all the final interviews of all 10 of our additional teachers to the district. These are outstanding applicants. As you know, for a 1-year position, you always, kind of cross your fingers and hope that we're getting strong applicants, but we have gotten very strong applicants, all for different reasons. People have come forward to work in the district for a 1-year position, and I'm just very excited about, again, these 2 applicants as well as all the other ones that we've been able to hire for 1-year positions. The third position, speech language pathologist, is someone who has left the position, and it is a part-time position. It is hard to fill a speech language position to begin with, and then one that is part-time is even harder. So we were pleased to be able to find a well-qualified person to fill this position.
Congratulations on filling those spots. That's a big task. It must feel good to have that box.
Administrators have done a great job.
Yeah. All right, all in favor?
I did just want to say one thing.
Oh, go ahead.
And that's that I hope that, because we have had so many wonderful candidates for 1-year positions, and I just look forward to seeing how we're able to hopefully keep them in the district after their 1-year contract is up.
And we do have a history, without saying too much, but we do have a history of when we have good teachers with us, even if they're in a temporary assignment. And actually, a lot of the 10 teachers were in a temporary assignment as a long-term substitute for us. Some of them were.
Yeah.
And so we were able to eyeball them, notice that they had great talent, and then hire them on for this. But in the past, we've also been able, through attrition, to be able to keep people on. So I'm hoping that at least we're able to do that for some of the folks that are in one-year positions.
Okay. And lastly, a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Second.
Any discussion? Okay. All in favor?
Usually no one, everyone votes on that one.
Everyone votes on that one. Thank you, everybody. Welcome new members. Have a great night.
you.